In iOS 14, Apple provides you a way to create custom widgets. The widgets are simply pieces of information that is displayed on your home screen or any other screen, or which can even take a little bit more space than the screen. And the main purpose of the widget is to provide you a glance of the actual data without opening up the app. So you can see over here the widgets come in many different sizes, and they are providing you some additional information about different things like stocks exchange or top stories or even music, weather, reminders, and so on. Keep that in mind that the widgets are not mini apps. They are part of the same app, but they are providing more of a content which is appropriate to be put on the home screen, a glanceable content, so you can simply glance at that and you will know what's going on. Let's go ahead and get started with creating your first widget. So let's go ahead and get started by creating our first widget. In order to create the widget, I'm going to go ahead and add a new target. So I'm going to go to Editor, add a brand new target, and I'm just going to search for widget. And you will see that if you search for widget, you will get something called a widget extension. The widget extension is going to allow you to add a widget target to your existing application. Let's go ahead and select widget extension, say next, and now I can go ahead and provide a particular name for my widget. I'm just going to call it Hello Widget Extension. That's fine. And let's go ahead and finish it. And we will activate it. Okay, so now you can see that we have a Hello Widget extension added. And if you go into and check into the hello widget extension.swift file, you'll see a lot of code already written for you. We're not really going to use any of that stuff, so we can go ahead and remove all of it. Now the widget that we're trying to create is a very, very basic widget. It's literally hello world, meaning that when you display the widget, it's literally just going to say hello world and that's it. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create something called a timeline entry. Now you can think of the timeline entry as kind of like the data that you want to display in that particular space in the widget. So I'm going to go ahead and create a struct, and I will simply call it hello world entry. It is going to be conforming to something called a timeline entry. So let's go ahead and do that. Also make sure that you have added the widget kit on the top, or else you will not be able to refer to the timeline entry. Now, if you are conforming to a timeline entry, you do have to specify a date. So we're just going to go ahead and say date, and any other data that you want the widget to be available. Now, since this is a hello world kind of a widget, I'm simply going to create a property called message, which will be of type string. And I don't really want to pass in the date again and again, so I'm just going to initialize it with the current date. All right. And that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and actually go ahead and fix that. Okay, so it's var, so making sure this is a var and not a let. Okay, great. The other thing that we want to do is we want to create a structure so that we can conform to a timeline provider. So I'm going to just going to call this provider, and this will be a timeline provider. Now, what is a timeline provider? A timeline provider is a protocol that consists of two different functions. So if I go ahead and implement those functions, the first thing is going to ask for the entry type. Entry type basically means that, okay, this timeline provider is going to provide what kind of data. We have already established that the data that we are providing is of type hello world entry, which we have declared right here. So timeline provider consists of two different functions that we need to implement. Let's go ahead and see. Let's go ahead and build this. And one of the function is the snapshot function. The snapshot function is a very special function, and the snapshot function is responsible for creating a snapshot, creating kind of like a moment in time to reflect, to see, or to visualize your widget. So this is kind of like those situations when you're trying to add a widget, and this is a snapshot that will be provided. So this has to be really, really fast, meaning that you shouldn't be doing some time-consuming operation in this case, because if the person is trying to add a widget and they don't really want to see the loading spinner, so make sure this part that it is going to return is going to be very fast. So I'm going to go ahead and fire the completion handler, and inside the completion handler, you can see that I have to provide a hello world entry. So I'm just going to say hello world entry, and I can provide the either date and the message. So I'm just going to say message, and I'm going to say hello world. The other function that I need to implement, which is part of the timeline provider, is called the actual timeline function. Now the main purpose of the timeline function is to provide you with an actual timeline, which means that maybe at 9 o'clock something happened, you have a different data, at 10 o'clock you had some different data, and so on. I'm going to simply go ahead and create entry equals to hello world entry, and I'm just going to pass in the message. In the message in this case, I'm also going to pass simply hello world. And finally, I can go ahead and call completion, and in the completion I can fire, or I can pass in the timeline with the entries as an array. So we only have one entry, which is entry, and policy is never, which basically means that it's really not going to update. It's kind of like a static view. Let's go ahead and build that. Okay, so we're getting one error. Let's go ahead and check out this error. It's basically saying that we forgot to create the main part of the app, which we still have to do. That's fine. Let's go ahead and create the view for our actual extension. What will be the user interface which will be displayed when you display the hello world view? So we're just going to say hello world view. The cool thing about widgets is that you can use, and you have to use, SwiftUI to create this, which makes your creation, the user interface for your widget, very, very easy to create. Entry, which will be provider.entry. So this entry will be of type hello world entry, which consists of a date and which consists of a message. Just like any other SwiftUI view, we are going to go ahead and say body, some view, and we can display anything we want over here. So I'm just going to say entry dot message, which in this case will always print hello world. The other thing that we need to do for our widget is to actually conform to the widget protocol, whether we are creating a static widget or a dynamic widget. For this, we will have to create another struct. So this will be our entry point for the widget. I will simply call it hello world widget, but you can call this anything you want. This will be using the protocol widget. And not only this, we will also go ahead and mark this with main, indicating that this is the starting point of the app. The first thing we're going to define is some sort of a variable which is going to specify the name for the widget, something unique about the widget. So we're just going to assign the hello world widget, and that's it. We also need to provide body, so body some, and instead of returning a view or something, this is going to return a widget configuration. Now the configuration can be an intent-based configuration, which is like a dynamic configuration, but right now we're simply going to use a static configuration, and you'll see that the static configuration takes in different arguments. So this is kind. Kind simply means what will be the ID or kind of widget. So I'm just going to provide the kind. Who will be the provider? Well, we have already created the provider, which will provide the timeline for the widget. The placeholder view is important because the placeholder is going to be displayed when you see the widget on the screen, then the placeholder view will be displayed. So I'm just going to say over here placeholder. And eventually the placeholder will be replaced by your actual content. And this is where we have to supply an actual content like the entry. So this will be the data. And over here we will get like this. There we go. And we will create a hello world view and passing in the entry, which in this case is entry. Let's go ahead and build that. And that is pretty much it. Now I'm going to go ahead and select iPhone SE second generation. Make sure that your target is selected Hello World extension, which basically means the widget is the one that you're running. And let's go ahead and run this. We'll see that when our simulator kind of pops up, it will display our Hello World view, which will eventually display simply Hello World. So let's go ahead and launch our simulator. And eventually it's trying to install the widget, and once the widget has been installed, you will see that the widget will simply say Hello World, and that's literally it, nothing more. So we're just waiting for the widget to be installed. First time you will install the widget, it is going to take some time, and there we go. It simply says Hello World, and that's it. I can go back to the previous screen. I can click on that. I can say Edit Home Screen. If I try to add these widgets, you can see these are the widgets I have. I'm not interested in any of those widgets. I already have the widget that I have, which is Hello World. If I click on that, it simply shows me the actual view, which is Hello World. Now this is one side of the widget, which is close to like 4 icons, normal icons, but widget comes in different sizes. So if I want to change the size, I'm simply going to pass in a particular size, another size, which is, let's say, the system medium. So the one that we were using before was system small. This one is system medium, which is going to be a little bit more bigger, taking in around 8 icons, normal size icons. There we go. So we have same widget, but it's in 2 different sizes. You can even go for system large, which is going to be very, very large, and this is going to be taking up way more space. It might even be installed on a completely separate screen because we don't have any more space. So there we go, Hello World. So it's the same widget, which is installed in 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large. But all of them obviously say the same exact thing, which is Hello World, which is coming from our data that we're passing and provided by the timeline. So this is the whole idea of the widget, and this is how you will create widget. Obviously this is a static configuration, meaning once you just put something on the widget, it just stays there. But widget can also be very, very smart, and they can use artificial intelligence to learn your behavior. In the future, I will cover all of those different things and how you can create smarter widgets which learn on the fly and which can kind of predict your daily schedule. So every time you need something, it will already be available on your screen, so you don't have to search for it. But hopefully this will give you an idea of how to get started by creating simple widgets in iOS 14 using SwiftUI.